It's time for us to talk about culture. Earlier, I said there are certain enigma that exist that we don't understand and we degrade or we are afraid of because we don't understand. And that's why you watch Cameroon Feeling, so you can get that understanding. Then you respect where you're coming from. Because we, the young people of today, we are going to be the heralds of tradition tomorrow. And if we don't have anything, what are we going to give to the generation after us? Nothing. And that's just destroying our tradition and our culture. Nothing to hold on to anymore. But our guest right now is doing a beautiful job of carrying forth the legacy of his father in all authority. You're going to get to know him, and then we'll talk about the Ekpe Secret Society. He's Prince Dr. Ako Tabetah, President and CEO of James Ashutakang Tabetah Foundation. He's also a medical doctor by profession and a chief of the Ekpe Society, and he's known as Sessekou. I'll greet him that way. Welcome, Sessekou, to Cameroon Feeling.
Thank you very much.
We're honored to have you here.
All the pleasure is mine.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so you've listened to what I've been saying about culture.
Yes.
Why is it important for young people to embrace it now more than ever before?
You know, our culture is our identity.
Yeah.
You know, wherever you go to in the world, you have to identify yourself. Who are you? Where do you come from? So, for example, I'm a medical doctor.
Yes.
That's what I am. It's not who I am. Who I am.
Yeah.
Who I am is where I come from. Who I am, my roots. So, we do not want to be lost in the bigger stage. You know, we want people to know us, who we are. And you know, the interesting thing is when we leave Africa and go to United States, where I live, and you go to Europe, you will discover that the Europeans have drifted away from their culture and moved to a new land that they called the United States of America. And yet they are still proud of certain things that they have, despite the fact that they've moved away.
Yeah.
But we just came like, if someone come from Africa just a couple of years
and they lose everything.
They will start identifying with a culture that is already redundant.
Yes.
A vestige of a culture, while we have this rich and beautiful culture. You see, if you don't know where you're coming from, you can't know where you're going to.
That's important.
And you can be lost in transition.
Yeah.
And the social structures of life and everything that it entails.
I do agree, but I want to understand how this was implanted in you in your childhood.
Well, where I grew up, I'm from Africa.
Yeah.
I grew up in Africa. I have a father who was who had a PhD in Texas in the 70s.
Okay.
But came back to Cameroon in Africa in order to ensure that he preserves this culture which his father had taught him. So it came from a patrilineal heritage. It came from a well-preserved heritage. So it's very easy for me to preserve it and pass it over to my son, because that's who we are. That is the way of the people.
So how did he pass it over to you? That's stuck in you and that makes you easily represented today?
Practice makes perfect. Practice makes perfect. By practicing it, we were able to grow up and see them, you know, emulate this great culture. And then I started practicing it, trying to understand, and he taught me a lot about it. Of course, I had the freedom and liberty to read so much about the culture. I became, you know, inquisitive enough to understand my identity.
Yeah.
You see, the Jews have their culture, and they've preserved their culture to today. You know, they're very proud of their culture. They have their traditions. We have our traditions too, and sometimes people get, you know, confused, you know, along the thin and narrow lines, you know, of what religion and culture is. But our culture and identity are so rich, and they do not conflict at all.
I want us to talk specifically about some of the traditional values he instilled in you, like particular values that he instilled in you. And from which area of Cameroon? Yeah,
I'm from the Bayangi tribe, Manu division. My father taught me about community. My father taught me that I do not have cousins. I have brothers.
Oh.
I do not have nephews and nieces. I have sons and daughters. I don't have aunties and uncles. I have fathers. And that is just the way it is, because that forms a strong community. You know, it gives us an insight into the most powerful social structure in the world, and that comes from us.
Yes.
I live in the United States, and I know what I'm talking about. For example, if I have one of my mothers that we will call auntie, who is 80 years old, she's not going to end up in a nursing home. She won't, because the family will build a house where she can live and be taken care of, and she will receive the love of everybody in the family.
Constantly.
Constantly.
Yeah.
And in return, she's going to be a blessing to the young generation going up, mentoring them and taking part in dispute. So we have this very strong African culture. Now this can be enhanced only with our deep roots in our culture. And that's where Ekpe society come in and other societies to preserve this and make our children know.
We're going to talk about that, but then I would humor you a little bit and say your father instilled the value of Chemti. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Which is togetherness.
Community, togetherness.
Yes, and also the value of age. We live in a society where people are afraid of growing old, and when the aged are around them, they don't know the kind of conversations to have. But you just said something really important. They are a transfer of a wealth of knowledge and lessons, and we should cherish them even more.
Right.